By the time I saw 100 wedding guests trampling my tulips, Lindsay already had a DJ set up in my barn and her cousin Trent had parked his pickup in my koi pond. Her daughter's wedding wasn't just on my land. It was using my power, my decorations, and, I kid you not, my toilet paper. So I opened the side gate and my King Corsos walked out like royalty. Now I know what you're thinking. How does someone even pull that off legally? And how do they not notice? Trust me, I asked myself the same questions. But when you live next to someone like Lindsay HOA president by force of personality with a blonde bob and a smile tighter than a lug nut, you learn logic isn't her strong suit. Entitlement, though? Olympic level. This didn't start with dogs or weddings. It started with a stupid wooden fence. I built it myself when I bought my 5-acre lot just outside the HOA boundary, deliberately outside. I liked peace, quiet, and most importantly, freedom from people like Lindsay who think they should have a say in your mailbox color. I'd spent the last few years turning my land into a little slice of heaven. Fruit trees, a hand-built barn, a small greenhouse, and 2 cane Corsos named Titan and Nix, who were better behaved than most kids I'd met. Things were great until Lindsay found out I had a barn. She showed up at my door with a bottle of grocery store wine and a grin so fake it practically squeaked. Said her daughter was getting married in a few months and they were looking at rustic venues. Told me my barn had a certain aesthetic charm which was rich, coming from the same woman who once reported another neighbor for having visible garden gnomes. I told her, politely but firmly, that my property wasn't available for events. Not weddings, not birthdays, not her book club meetings about harnessing your man's inner hero. She pouted, said she understood, and left. I should have known that wasn't the end of it. A week later, I saw tire marks on my gravel path. Then a measuring tape was left on my porch. Then Mr. O'Connor, my neighbor, said he saw people taking selfies in front of the barn. When I asked Lindsay, she laughed and said her daughter's wedding planner must have gotten confused. I reminded her again to stay off my land. The next day, I put up new private property signs. Big ones. So imagine my surprise when I returned from the hardware store one Saturday morning to find cars crammed on my lawn, my tulips flattened, and a giant white tent pitched beside the barn. Music blasted. A DJ yelled, "Let's give it up for the bride and groom." At first, I thought I'd driven into someone else's dreamo nightmare. But no. It was my driveway. My barn. My land. And there was Lindsay, draped in sequins, barking orders with a clipboard like she owned the place. She didn't just move the wedding onto my land. She used my decoration, the reclaimed wood arch I built for my cousin's anniversary, my mason jars, my antique wheelbarrow filled with flowers. Even my toilet paper was gone from the barn's guest bathroom. I walked up, heart pounding, jaw locked. "Lindsay, what the hell is this?" She blinked like I was the one crashing her party. "Oh, I assumed you changed your mind. I left you a note." "No," I said. "I didn't get a note because I didn't give you permission. This is trespassing." She rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic. It's just one day. You weren't even using the barn." Before I could answer, a guest already a few drinks in handed me a dirty plate and asked where the trash was. Lindsay just turned and walked away. I stood there, stunned, contemplating my options. Call the cops? Too slow. Raise my voice? She'd just twist it into a tantrum. Then I glanced at the gate and saw Titan and Nix sitting calmly, ears up, waiting. They weren't aggressive, but they were trained to guard. To intimidate. 2 massive cane Corsos walking out of a barn toward people in pastel dresses? That would be chaos. But I had a better idea. I went inside, grabbed my phone, and started recording. If I was going down, I wanted evidence. I filmed the cars, the tent, the generator plugged into my barn, the guests using my hose. Even caught Lindsay pointing at me and laughing with the photographer. A voice in my head whispered, "You can't let her get away with this." Because if she could hijack someone's land for a 100-guest wedding, what would stop her from pushing the HOA boundary just a little further next time? I waited until the vows were about to start. The guests gathered at the arch. The bride held a bouquet of peonies. I swear I saw Lindsay snip from my garden. The music started. The officiant spoke. I walked to the barn, opened the gate, and gave a sharp whistle. Titan and Nix stepped out like kings. The flower girl screamed. Someone dropped a tray. Drinks spilled. Guests ran. And in the middle of it all, Lindsay's face froze in the most beautiful expression of horror I'd ever seen. I didn't say a word. Just watched the chaos unfold. And then 2 squad cars pulled in. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who called. When the officers got out, Lindsay ran to them, crying about vicious animals and ruined memories. One officer turned to me. "You the property owner?" I nodded. Then came the question that dropped my stomach. "Do you know this event lists your address as the official venue?" I stared. "Wait, what?" He held up a permit. My address. Stamped and approved by the county. The name listed? Lindsay R. Green. She forged it. She actually forged a permit using my land and her name and somehow got it approved. Suddenly, everything made sense. The surveyor, the random clipboard, the event planner who waved at me like we were friends. I explained everything to the officer. He frowned, flipped through the packet, then tilted his head toward Lindsay. "She says you agreed verbally. Says it was a friendly deal." I took a deep breath. If I agreed, why did she fake my signature and list herself as the contact? That gave him pause. They stepped aside to talk. I walked to the barn. Titan and Nix sat like board gods. The wedding party was in shambles. Cake knocked over, chairs strewn, plates broken. Lindsay was yelling at the DJ, the caterer, the bride's cousin, anyone. I could have ended it there. Called animal control. Shut the power off. But no. That wasn't enough. She had to face it. So I started gathering more evidence. Pulled up the barn's security feed. I had video of her unlocking the barn, unhooking the gate, carrying in decorations. I even caught her on the phone saying, "Just use the address. I'll deal with the old guy later." I'm 47. By the time the cops came back, I had the footage ready. The permit highlighted with every falsified field. One of the younger officers leaned in. "Would you be willing to email this to us?" "Absolutely." Lindsay saw me sending it and stormed over. "You're being incredibly petty," she hissed. "This is my daughter's wedding. You're ruining it." "No reason," I said. "You broke into my barn. Forged a document. Destroyed my garden. Used my toilet paper. That's not petty. That's criminal." Nix growled. Just a low, warning sound. Lindsay froze, wobbled in her heels, then walked away. Turns out she didn't pay the vendors either. Claimed the property owner would reimburse them. One tried to hand me a $700 invoice for appetizers. I told him where he could file that. That evening, the permit was flagged. Lindsay got a warning. I got a black coffee and stood on my porch with my dogs like it was the end of a Western. Next morning, I filed a formal complaint with the county clerk. Sent the footage, screenshots, everything. Then I called my lawyer. Not a cheap one. A good one. The kind whose voice sounds like ice cracking on a lake. By Monday, Lindsay's face was in 3 neighborhood chats. Someone filmed the dog scene and posted it online. It blew up. The caption? Lindsay versus the Corsos. Who wins? She came back 3 days later. Not to apologize. No. She brought an envelope and that smug smirk like she'd figured out a solution. Inside was a typed letter and a check for $500. A token gesture, she called it, for the misunderstanding. I didn't touch it. Just pinned it to the fridge and stared at it like it was a personal dare. Lindsay thought she'd won. She hadn't. I gave my lawyer everything. Footage, screenshots, timestamps. He said, let's see how she handles being the star of a civil suit. While he filed paperwork, I cleaned. The koi pond was a mess. 1 fish dead. Party streamer around its fin. I buried it under a maple with a sign, "Here lies Gary." He never saw the Tahoe coming. The barn was worse. Beer bottles. Confetti. Lipstick on the beams. I loved Lindsay's cookies. Took 3 hours to sand off. Messages poured in. Some supportive. Some nosy. One neighbor sent me a screenshot of Lindsay claiming the whole thing was a setup. That I tricked her into thinking it was okay so I could go viral. She called me a manipulator who lures people in with good vibes and then unleashes dogs like a Bond villain. Meanwhile, the video passed 1 million views. Someone even edited it into a fake perfume ad. Slow-mo. Opera music. Caption, "Revenge by Kane Corso." 2 weeks later, the county sent a letter. Urgent. Permit violations. Forgery. Illegal alcohol. Noise complaints. 5-figure fine. Possible legal action. Under Lindsay's name. Not mine. I framed it. Put it next to the check. She must have gotten hers too because around 4 p.m. I heard shouting. Stepped outside. Saw her pacing in her driveway, phone to her ear, red as a beet. A few days later, the HOA called an emergency meeting. Full soap opera energy. People brought lawn chairs and popcorn. Lindsay walked in looking like she hadn't slept in a week. The new president, Ben, cleared his throat. We're here to discuss abuse of power and fraudulent use of community resources. Translation, Lindsay, you're toast. She blamed her assistant. Said she thought I was joking. Said she was just trying to make her daughter's day special. Someone in the back muttered, "Not when you break into someone's barn." And the room cracked up. Vote to remove her as president? 17-1. Hers. She walked out without a word. Shot me a glare like I personally dismantled her soul. I just gave her a no-to checkmate nod. Then came the last envelope. No return address. Just one line, I hope it was worth it. I laughed for 10 minutes. Then told Jeff, my lawyer, to double the damages. Turns out Lindsay wasn't done. Tried to launch a reputation rehab campaign. Claimed she was the victim. Hosted a healing bake sale. 2 people came. One was selling scented candles. Then a film group released a TikTok reenactment. Barking dogs. Panicked guests. A Lindsay wig so accurate it had to be real. 500,000 views in a day. Final shot. Fake Titan and Nyx walking off with a slice of wedding cake in their mouths. I watched it 3 times. Meanwhile, I discovered the HOA's irrigation pipe ran a few feet onto my land. Filed to revoke the access. Watched them pay thousands to reroute it. Lindsay showed up yelling about sabotage. I just smiled. Funny. I'm just getting started. The civil case moved fast. Her lawyer showed up in a wrinkled suit. Ours came with binders. Judge ruled hard. Lindsay paid for everything. Pond. Lawn. Equipment. Reputation. Emotional distress. The $500 check? Entered as insultingly inadequate. She had to write a formal apology. Not handwritten. Court approved. Every neighbor got a copy. Best line? I recognize the importance of respecting personal property and the consequences of ignoring boundaries. I laminated it. HOA invited me to a Goodwill barbecue. I went, brought the dogs. Someone asked if they were the wedding crashers. I said they prefer uninvited guest removal specialists. Most laughed. A few looked scared. Perfect. Lindsay showed up. Stayed on the far side, arms crossed. Left early. Her husband didn't make eye contact with anyone. 6 months later, they moved out. Downsized. Relocated. Hopefully somewhere her reputation hasn't followed her yet. I put up a new sign. Titan and Nyx's barn. No weddings. No Lindsays. People take photos with it. Life's peaceful again. My tulips are blooming. My koi pond is full. I even named one fish Little Lindsay. Neighbors still ask how things are. I always say the same thing, things are calm. The dogs are happy. The barn's still standing. And every now and then, when I hear distant wedding bells, I pour myself a drink, sit on my porch, and smile. Because somewhere out there, Lindsay is hearing dog barks in her nightmares. And my property, is still mine, always has been, always will be.